Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and very pleased on this episode to talk to a fellow 8-track collector. His name is Ernesto, but if you follow him on Instagram, you follow him as Zartan69, named after one of my favorite G.I. Joe villains from back in the 80s. If you're a certain age, you'll remember Zartan was the sort of mercenary for hire for Cobra. And he was sort of a chameleon-like character, and he had a really cool vehicle. But yeah, so I started following Zartan a while ago on Instagram, and come to find out he's a big 8-track collector. And so you've got a lot of cool 8-tracks and a lot of cool 8-track players, and there's a lot to talk about. But I guess the first thing I'll ask you, and then we've talked about this off cameras, like, how did you first get into collecting 8-track players and 8-track tapes?
I think it started when I was like about 17, 18. I'm kind of late in the game. Just randomly picking them up and seeing them at thrift stores and stuff. And my dad used to have an old console player, those big giant wooden things. And he had it, and he had a bunch of 8-tracks, but they were mostly different kinds of music. But I had a few rock ones, and then I bought some. And I started playing them on this big giant console, and these consoles had amazing sound for the style and everything that they were made for. They sounded really good, and I just started buying 8-tracks little by little. Back then, 8-tracks were a lot easier to find than they were now, and I just started collecting from there on. So I'm kind of late in the game. I started a little late.
You may be late in the game, but you've got some cool 8-tracks, and specifically when we get talking about the record club only 8-tracks and the Columbia House 8-tracks, you've got a bunch of those. I know for a fact, because we talked about this, you've got one of the most highly sought hard rock heavy metal 8-tracks that were made. I don't have it, and I'd like to have it. And you've said that you've had so many people ask you if you're going to sell it, and I think you know the one I mean.
I think you're talking about Motley Crue.
I'm talking about Shout at the Devil, the one Motley Crue album that was made on 8-track. It's usually always in very high demand, and it's one of those ones that I've sort of come to terms with. I probably won't be having it,
right?
But you never know. You know, there's estate sales and there's things like that. But yeah, you've got a lot of cool 8-tracks, and another cool thing is that there's a lot of bands that we have in common that aren't the more well-known bands like Y&T, and especially Coney Hatch. Like, you're a big Coney Hatch fan, which I think is awesome because like Y&T in Canada, Coney Hatch weren't that well known in the States, and they only did 3 albums back in the 80s. And really good stuff. We've talked about this. We've neither of us have ever seen any Coney Hatch 8-tracks, but
no,
that does not mean they're not out there.
That's true. They do probably exist, but I mean, I haven't seen any in the States, and I've been everywhere.
I would say maybe the first one would be the one that would have the best shot. As a matter of fact, it might. It may have come out in Canada via Columbia House based on an order form that I have. So I've never seen the tape, but I've seen the fact that it was available. It's just, did anybody buy it, and did anybody, did any of them actually get manufactured? And speaking of Columbia House, you know someone personally who worked for Columbia House back in the 1980s, and
I'm trying to get No, I was gonna say, I'm trying to get a hold of her so we can talk to her, and it's kind of tricky, but hopefully she remembers what she did and what her job title was. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
Because that's one of those like Holy Grail type things, to actually talk to someone and say, what was the process when someone would mail in their order form and they've selected 8-tracks? Do you just go, oh, they want this on 8-track, I guess we'll have to make some, like, especially when you get towards the tail end of it, I dug out a few of my RCO 8-tracks. The newest one I have is the Fleetwood Mac Tango in the Night, which is from 1987.
Okay.
And so nobody, they just weren't very popular. And a lot of people to this day, they're still surprised when they find out that when they made those into the 80s, like the Loverboy here, from 85, and so yeah, for the albums that I like, I really want to have all the 8-tracks that were made, and inevitably that means that you're getting into the 80s. So what are some of your prized 8-tracks. They don't have to be RCOs, but just ones that you're really glad to find.
Well, of course, we're talking about Motley Crue.
There you go. That's so cool. This is the thing about those that it's just like there shouldn't be a Motley Crue 8-track, you know?
Right.
But there is, and that's I just think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you've seen this one, Crocus Headhunters.
Yeah, they
That
have
one
a few. As a matter of fact, that's rare. But I think the last one that they did was on 8-track was Change of Address, which is newer than that one.
Yeah,
it's not as good an album. Headhunters is a better album.
I saw that. Yeah, the Headhunters is really good. I saw the Change of Address, but it's going for too much. It's ridiculous. Really expensive.
And when you get into that, it's nothing to do with how good the album is. It's how rare it is and the fact that it's 1986 by now.
Right. And then I have Thin Lizzy Rockers, 1971 to 74. This is a nice piece, a really nice one.
That is very cool. And it's sealed. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you can take it out, but it's got the plastic on it.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a rare
one. What label is that on?
Decca.
Okay, so so that's their early stuff. Okay, yeah, that's like a compilation from their first 2 or 3 albums, the early stuff. That's very cool.
This is pretty rare because I just found this on a fluke. I mean, it's just you don't find them like that. Very rare.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, you've probably seen this one, or you probably have this one. Van Halen's 1984.
I do. It's funny you mentioned that. I don't. The one I have is pretty beat up, and you've got an RCA music service version in really good shape. I've got a very beat up Columbia House version, but it's still. I'm still glad to have it.
Yeah, you can find them. You'll be surprised. You can still find them.
Yeah,
and then
5150 is the one that I'd really like to find.
This is one of my favorites. This is because it's one of my favorite bands besides, well, my favorite band is Thin Lizzy, but this is one of my second favorite bands. It's UFO Phenomena. This is their first album.
The Chrysalis tapes were very distinct. They're green. They're the only ones I've ever seen that are green like that. Them and Jethro Tull and any bands that were on Chrysalis.
Yeah,
now, it's funny. I remember when I was growing up, I remember like some of my older cousins had a few 8-tracks.
Right.
And they had ones like The Cars and Blondie and stuff like that. But I remember one, and I don't know who it was that had it, but I remember it because I thought the cover was so weird. It was Obsession.
Oh, okay.
It was the one that had all the silver balls on it or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It was that one. And I think it was
great album.
It was a Canadian. It was a Canadian copy, but I remember that their eyes were all, I remember
those are
that
amazing, amazing group and amazing. I mean, the fact that you could find them, it's wow. I mean, that first album, I don't think I was ever going to be able to find it, and I found it just randomly. I went to a sale, and this guy had a bunch of 8-tracks, and this is the great thing about that. You can't just, if you're looking for something, no matter how absurd and how crazy it is, whatever you find, you got to go look because you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, it's different than collecting vinyl because vinyl is a little bit more widespread. You got to be prepared to do some digging and looking around. And you also have to be prepared to have a day where you drove around all day and you didn't find anything.
Exactly.
But you could also have a day where you drove around and at the end of the day you found one thing, but it was a really cool thing.
Yes, and believe me, in California, you got to drive.
Yeah.
Here's Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith.
Nice. That's 1984.
Yeah.
That's Columbia House. So I think that was the last Priest album that came out on 8-track. Yeah. When you get into the metal bands, those are the ones that are way up in value. Like the first 3 Iron Maiden albums, like those are hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Yeah. That's if you can find one for sale. Yeah. And the other thing you have to watch out with those is that people make counterfeits. They try to pass them off as real.
I see a couple of guys doing counterfeits. I don't like it because, and then what if somebody buys it and then tries to sell it as a real thing, and that kind of ruins it for everybody, you know?
Yeah. Because I've seen there's there's someone that I can't think of their name, but that I follow on Instagram, and maybe you do too. But they make 8-tracks, but they make it quite plain on the label that this is for recreational use only or whatever. They make it quite plain that they're not trying to pass it off as an official one. But when to counterfeit one and make it look exactly like one that came out back in the day, that's tricky, because all of a sudden the market will get flooded with these, and it's hard to know. Like, but I mean, there are things you can look for. It's pretty hard to fake the years. It's pretty hard to fake, like you wouldn't intentionally put one together and scratch it all up and leave it out in the sun and make it look aged like that. If you see one on eBay, I guess I'll tell anybody this, and it looks too perfect, and it's relatively cheap, it's probably not authentic.
Right.
You know?
And those are good points. Let me show you this one. Can you see this one?
Nice. Scorpions Love at First Sting. That's 84.
Great album.
That's their second to last 8-track, is the Worldwide Live.
Yes.
Is on 8-track too.
Great album. I mean, she's just some great music. I mean, and the fact that you can find it on 8-track is just mind blowing.
Again, I know. To me, it's just one of those. I get so intrigued by it, because it's like, how is this possible?
Yeah. I mean,
I just show a couple 8-tracks that I got not too long ago.
Okay.
And I think we've talked about this. Just you like April Wine, right? We talked about that. You're an April Wine.
Oh
fan?
yeah. I love April Wine. Yeah.
So recently found this one, which I don't even think was released in the States. It's their first live album from 1974, and this one actually comes in an Aquarius Records slipcase. It's really rare to find them in the actual slipcases. So I was happy to find that one. That leaves only a couple of April Wine ones that I don't have. And then I just got this not too long ago. It's Toto Turned Back from 1981. And they've got more recent ones on 8-track, but the newest one I have is the 4th one. Another thing that I found is this comes when I worked, because I work at radio, and my first job, we were an AM station, and this is a cart. They call them carts. They're essentially 8-tracks. And this had some of the commercial jingles that we used to play, and they were on an endless loop. See, I remember using some of these when I first started, and I remember putting commercials on them. And the commercial ones that were like 30 seconds long had hardly any tape inside of them. But this is a good way to look if somebody's never seen the innards of an 8-track before. This is what they look like. And I don't know how long this one is, but if you have like a double live album, there's a lot of tape inside these things.
Yeah. And believe me, it takes skill. There's a couple of guys, maybe I could give them a shout out. Guys like, of course, Austin from, 8-track Collector, and JJ 8-track and 8-track Dance. Those guys, man, that's hats off to those guys, because they're just, carry on the flag, because they got some great tracks.
I think it's JJ that does the custom ones. I could be wrong.
I think he knows the guy who does the custom one, or he does them. I don't know. Sure. Yeah, but those guys are great,
because I think he posts them.
Yeah. They're great, and
those ones are.
They're just doing, like I said, they got the collections going, and they're posting all the time, and it's good that they're doing that, because I don't know how old they are. I really don't know their age, but I'm hoping they're younger than me. Well,
Austin's. Is Austin 20? He's just a young guy that's gotten into this habit. So it's great to see. It's great to see the younger generation, getting. It's cool enough when the younger generation just gets turned on to the classic rock stuff. But when they start to collect the 8-tracks, because it takes some dedication to, it's not an easy habit to get into, and it's not a particularly cheap one either.
No, it's not.
So unlike me, you actually play your 8-tracks, and you've got some players.
I got the players, plus I also have a set of 8-tracks that I use just in my shop, where I have a wood shop that I have, and I eventually play them once in a while and stuff. Let me see if I can show it to you. It's a Montgomery Ward's called Airline, and it's an old player, but I cleaned it up and I got it playing, and I got some strange 8-tracks. Let's see if you can see it. Can you see it?
I see. Oh yeah, I see a bit of it. stand back a little bit because I can. There we go. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good view of it.
Yeah.
Wow, that looks familiar. I've seen ones like that, but not for a long, long time.
Yeah. And I found it in a collection of 8-tracks. And what happened is I just brought it home. I started cleaning it. I tested it out and it works fine. And it hasn't eaten any tapes. Cross my fingers.
Yeah.
So, that's the good thing.
Yeah.
But I do have an assortment.
Does it have did that player that you showed up, does that have a radio too, or is it just strictly an 8-track player?
No, it has a radio. Yeah. It has a radio.
Okay.
Has these
Yeah.
nice little speakers, and it sounds great. It sounds like any modern little system that you can buy, in the store now. It's just amazing how the quality. It's just crazy.
Cool.
Like, But I also have my expensive players. Now those, I have 2 of them in my house right now, but those are like, I have them on my rack, on my stereo rack. I got to show those another day, but I think I have one here. Let me see if I can pull this one out. This is another one. It's part of my collection. I have 3 of these. Now, this is an Akai. This is a really, really nice 8-track player. I mean, if you can find one, great, because these are really good 8-track players and they don't eat up tapes as much, and they're just built like tanks. Let me see if I can show it to you.
Yeah, Kai's a big name. Okay. Wow. That's a nice, that looks like it's in great shape.
It is. And I got 3 of them.
Nice. Yeah.
I found one and I keep buying it, and I buy another one and I buy another one. And it's not a quad player. Now let's get something straight. Those quad players, I have 2 of those. Those are amazing players too. But they're more fragile and delicate, and you got to maintain them constantly. And not that many people have quad tapes.
Yeah, they only made quad tapes for a few years, and then I know Austin's got quite a few quad tapes. He had the surprised me. He had Alice Cooper, Muscle of Love on quad, and they were different. That they're different than 8-track tapes. So if anybody's just getting into this and they see one and it says quad, the first thing you'll notice is that it's only got 2 programs and not 4, and they take a special player. Now, this would be a good time to ask, because I mean, this is one of the things that would happen inevitably with 8-tracks. I think it's one of the reasons why cassettes sort of overtook them in popularity. What causes an 8-track to get eaten up, and in other words, have the tape spool all over the place and just sometimes get ruined if you don't catch it soon enough? I
think it's all about maintenance. You have to keep them clean. That's all it is. In maintenance and alignment. Alignment is very important because it keeps the tape from making that weird crossover sound.
Crosstalk.
Yeah. It's all about cleaning it, maintenance, and alignment. And those are little tricky things, because aligning a tape head and aligning an 8-track is very, very it's not that easy. So you got to know what you're doing, and cleaning and maintenance is very important.
So it's a little bit more, like if you have a record player, there's maintenance that's involved there. You got to make sure you change the needles, and you don't want it to get dusty. But these are you got to like literally take them apart, and what do you do? Run like get a Q-tip with some oil, or like
well, you can use the detox. You can use detox, okay. And then you can use rubbing alcohol, but don't use the 99. I think it's the 90% alcohol. You got to use the lower one. I think it's like 80 something or 75%. And you got to take care of it. You got to clean the heads and everything all around it. And it's just keeping it maintained, keeping it clean and dust free. You got to, you can't be putting these in if it's all dusty and all that, because these things are old.
Yeah.
But I think that maintenance is very important.
And the tapes themselves, I mean, probably, I don't know if anyone can tell that, but there's a felt pad behind that tape, and the tapes need maintained too, do they not?
Yeah. The felt pads are great because you can get those anywhere now. They sell them on eBay and on Amazon, So that's good.
It's probably easier now to pick up the habit of to take up the tape, the 8-track collecting and then playing them now, than it would have been in the early 90s, say, before everybody had the internet.
Right.
Because you reach out to people that are also into it and say, oh, this one works for me.
Yeah, I think it's getting bigger now than it was back in the 90s. You
Yeah.
know, bigger now. I mean, so many people are collecting. I even have trouble finding certain items or finding 8 tracks because they usually sell so quick, especially on the ads and stuff. When somebody has a set of 8 tracks for sale, they usually sell really quick.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to matter the music's country or folk, because they'll just buy it.
Yeah. Well, another thing is I think that people are more savvy, because I can remember in the late 80s. So in the late 80s, I was buying tapes. I was 14, 15 years old, but
Right.
I was always interested in like, I liked older bands, so I wanted to find their albums on vinyl and, whatever I could, right? And
Right.
but I can remember seeing 8 tracks for 50 cents, for $1,
Right.
just everywhere. And I remember seeing them in the seal for 50
Right.
cents with like store tag, and then another store tag, and then another store tag. They just wanted to get rid of them. And I bet a lot of those stores now are wishing they'd held on to that old stock, because, I think people are more savvy of what they have. Like if somebody has a rare, like a Columbia House 8-track, if they were a member of the club in the 80s and they still had 8 tracks and they've been sitting around, and all of a sudden, it only takes one person to say, those are valuable. They might not think they are. So you've got some valuable 8 tracks there.
Yeah.
And because of that, you really have to watch. I mean, it's just wasn't too long ago, I got beat out at the last minute on an eBay bid on a Triumph Thunder 7 8-track. And
wow.
just one of those ones in the last second. I was like, and then I think, well, that's money saved, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe next time.
What's the most you ever spent on an 8-track?
Wow. I'm trying to think how much and then what it was on a single 8-track. I've spent over $100 on.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm trying to think of what it was. And when I say that, that also includes the shipping, because I usually have to find them online. It's evading me now, because I can remember most of the ones that I got when I got them. It might have been Journey Raised on Radio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's rare.
That's not quite as rare as the Greatest Hits one.
Right.
But, well, you know what? It is, because I've seen more pictures of the Greatest Hits one than I have Raised on Radio.
Okay.
Although if the Greatest Hits one, because that's one of the last ones ever made, November 88.
Right.
That would be it right there. And there's one that I didn't get, that I kind of wish now that I would have taken the prize for the most expensive one. But Kiss Animalize came up once on eBay, and it was a buy it now. It was a buy it now. It wasn't a bidding one.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I probably just should have pulled the trigger, and I wish that I had, because there's 4 Kiss 8-tracks right at the end that I don't have. Right. Elder, Creatures of the Night, Lick It Up, and Animalize, and that would have given me the one on the end.
Right.
If you, what are some some of those later 80s ones that you don't have that you really, really like to?
Good question. But it's funny because I love Canadian rock. So right now I want to just collect mostly, like, I think I need like maybe 2 8-tracks from the Frank Marino collection. That's I'm missing. And then April Wine. I'm still trying to get more April Wine. The Kiss thing is funny. The Kiss thing is like, I want to collect the Kiss thing. I know I can get it, but it doesn't urge me as much as the other stuff, because it's so available. Meaning I've seen people selling the whole sets, like the whole solo albums, and they're not expensive. So
no, you can get, like, if a person wanted to start right now, if they were a Kiss fan, you can get the first album through Dynasty,
right, pretty
easily and pretty cheaply, really, with the possible exception of the originals. That one might. Unmasked can be quite expensive, especially if you want a retail one and not a Columbia House one. Right. You know what? I bet I spent $100 by the time it came, and I paid shipping. I bet I spent $100 on the Elder.
Wow.
Because and it's in good shape. It's in really good shape. So it's like, now I've got it. So it's funny, like you mentioned April wine, like I'm up here in Canada and, I'm in the Maritimes, like I'm in Eastern Canada. That's where April wine are from. You'd think it'd be easy to find April wine 8 tracks.
Right.
It's not. It's not. Like you see a lot of on record, the
Right.
second one, and you see a lot of stand back, the one with the cannon on it.
Yeah.
Other than that, to fill in all of them, it's taken me a long time, and I still don't have them all. Like I
What
still don't
about,
have the first one, and I still don't have the Live at the Alma combo.
do you have Power
And
Play?
I have Power Play. That's the
Okay.
newest one that I have,
Okay.
and I don't know if Animal Grace exists.
Right.
If it did, it would be a club one, and that's the other thing about the Columbia House ones up here, because I know there are bands that didn't really make it south of the border, like Helix and Honeymoon Suite and Kim Mitchell and Coney Hatch, that I'm wondering if there are some Canadian ones, but
Right.
those seem to be even more scarce than
Yeah.
the US ones. And as near as I can tell, they stopped Columbia House, the Canadian division of Columbia stopped in 84, because I've
Okay.
never seen any past 84. The newest ones I've seen from 84, I have seen the Judas Priest Defenders of the Faith. I've seen Quiet Riot, Condition Critical. And I've seen Steve Perry Street Talk. And they look way, way, way different than the US ones. You can tell the difference between them in a second. Like they just look
Right.
completely different. I've seen Queen the Works.
Oh, okay.
That's another one I'd really like to get, because that's the only Queen one I don't have. I've got all the way the first album through Hot Space.
Right.
But yeah, as far as like other Canadian ones, like I've got a couple of Max Webster ones, like Kim Mitchell's band before he went solo. Those aren't the easiest ones to find. The Rush ones, I've got the first album through Signals, but I still need Grace Under Pressure and Power Windows. And Grace Under Pressure comes up a little bit more than Power Windows does. Power Windows is super scarce. Like it's only been in the last 3 years I even knew that existed on 8-track. Triumph, I've got.
There's a guy selling Power Windows, but they're copies. You got to be careful for that. Watch out for that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing is to look for, if you get to know, and I've seen that on eBay, because it looks like a Polygram Mercury cart, because it's got the beige cart. It looks like what it would have looked like if they made it to retail, and that one wasn't. So that never existed in retail. So it only ever existed as a club cart. Triumph is another Canadian band that's one of my favorites. So I've got their first album through Allied Forces. Like I said, I missed the Thunder 7 one, and I think that's the last one. And Never Surrender is actually the more rare of the two. That one comes up less. Other than that, like I said, Coney Hatch, I'd love to find. Aldo Nova, I have the first Aldo Nova album, but he put his second album out, Subject, and it's very rare, but it did come out on Columbia House. I've seen it, and I don't know if any of his albums came out or not. So there's definitely regional things that come into play on how often you see things. But like I said, April wine, you'd think it'd be easy to fill the collection. Not if you want them all. It's you really gotta dig and then put the time in.
Yeah. I think the easiest bands to collect would probably be to me, I think it'll probably be AC/DC and Deep Purple, because I have like all the Deep Purples. I think I'm missing maybe the 2 first albums, but I have all the Deep Purples. Yeah, all of them until Perfect Strangers.
Perfect Strangers. Yeah. So you have Perfect Strangers?
Yeah, I have Perfect Strangers.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can find and show it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are like, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. And and what a great album too. I mean, it is the only RCO they have, but what a great album. And AC/DC, the newest one I have by AC/DC is Flick of the Switch, but Fly on the Wall and Who Made Who also came out on 8-track. I've never seen those ones for sale.
Right. Let me show you a pretty rare 8-track. This is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. This is a quad one.
Yeah. So it's only got 2 programs. And is it Animals? One of their 8-tracks actually has like an extra guitar solo that was not on the vinyl version. I think it's Animals.
Yeah. Here's Pink Floyd, Adam Hart Mother.
That's a quad. Cool.
Yeah, it's a quad.
Yeah.
Those are pretty rare.
Yeah.
I think
they only made quads from like I don't know what, the early 70s to 75 or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't think they
And
made them like that.
those are hard to find, believe me. Those are like, wow, that's holy grail stuff. You know, it's like really hard.
Yeah.
You'll be
Yeah.
lucky.
Aerosmith is another band it's fairly easy to get the first album through the greatest hits.
Right.
I actually have Rockin' a Hard Place. That's not very common, but the one I don't have is done with mirrors. That's an
Okay.
RCA Music Service one. You don't see
Right.
that one very much. Van Halen, you could probably get Van Halen like all the way through 1984. Like you said, you could find 1984 pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
And if you're just a David Lee Roth fan, that's all you need. But
Yeah.
but 5150 is also on 8-track by both of the record clubs, and that's one that I'd really like to have to complete my collection. And speaking of Van Halen, so David Lee Roth's Eat 'Em and Smile came out. I've seen a Columbia House version of that.
Wow.
That's actually in the mid 90s. That's one of the first ones I saw when I realized that, they kept making 8-tracks, because I thought they stopped around 1981, 1982.
Right.
And they pretty much did in the retail end of it. And as far as Sammy Hagar goes, his go all the way up to 1987. The album he did, it's just self-titled.
Right.
The one Give to Live and Eagles Fly on it. That's on 8-track. So those are some. It's the ones towards the end that are the really hard ones to. Journey's another good example. I mean, even like you don't often see the first 3 albums, but you can get Escape and Departure and Infinity and those ones quite easily. You can even get, I think there's a Frontiers on eBay right now, or as we record this. But Raised on Radio is hard to find, and the Greatest Hits one is just
Right.
like that. That's where they stopped production of 8-tracks. And that's another thing I'd like to know is like, why did they keep going so long? But what made them finally decide to, okay, we're done offering these on 8-track?
Right.
Because when CDs first, the Columbia House catalogs I've seen first started offering CDs in 1986. So that means for 3 years, depending on the title, you had 4 choices of formats.
Right.
So I'm sure.
You know what? When CDs came out, it was funny because I had a huge collection of tapes, and this was when back in the late 80s, right before CDs came out. And I had a huge collection of tapes, and then CDs came out, and it just changed everything. You know what I mean? The whole sound and everything changed, and everybody wanted CDs.
Yeah, and I certainly did. I had over 200 tapes by that point, and then it was getting to the point where, I just thought the CDs were cool because they'd never drag, or they'd never wind up,
right?
If you took care of them. And I don't think that's true. But the funny thing is I found that over the years, I've replenished my cassette collection because I have such nostalgia for them.
Right.
And kind of like 8-tracks, if you look in like Indonesia and Malaysia and places like that, they continued to make cassettes all the way up to 2007, because I've got a couple of Poison ones from that era, like a best of. I've got some. I've got a Rush Vapor Trails. That's very, very rare on cassette, and that's the last one they had. So they kept it's a little bit like 20 years behind for the 8-tracks, because I stopped seeing cassettes in stores around the turn of the century, like 99, 2000. Right. But in other parts of the world, they kept making them a little longer. It's just really, really interesting. And of course, who could have predicted the resurgence in vinyl?
Yeah, exactly. Because we started in vinyl. We all did in our younger generation. We all started in vinyl because of our family members got us into music and got us into vinyl, and it changed our lives, completely. At least for me. And the 8-track and the tape format, I wasn't even thinking about that. Yes, we were dubbing tapes when tapes became more popular. Everybody was trying to dub, music or recording from record to tape, or their radio station. You remember when they used to do that?
Oh yeah,
that was a big thing for us growing up.
Yeah, I must have had one. I must have had 4 dozen or more cassettes of just songs taped off the radio, because I didn't have enough money to go buy all these, and to the point where there's some certain songs, and I can't think of one right off the top of my head. There's certain songs where as the song gets to a close, I expect to hear a DJ come on and say, "Hey, that's the new whatever," right? And you try to get the cleanest possible copy of it. But one thing I think about 8-tracks is that people need to realize too is that as cool as records are, they're not portable in the slightest. 8-tracks were really the first portable way that you could listen to. Like, I'm sure at one time the idea of being able to listen to music in your car was probably unheard of. And my understanding is that it was pretty easy to install an 8-track deck in your car and just leave it there.
Yeah, that's true. And it's just, I don't have that many portables because I just really haven't found a lot of portables that I like. But when you do find them, they're really nice. There's a couple of people online that have some great portables, and I wish I had more room to buy more portables, but my units and everything else takes up so much space. But do you remember these? They used to go in the, you remember these?
Oh, the adapters. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. No, I've never seen one like that.
Yeah.
I've never seen one like that. What I was thinking you were going to show was the one they were, I wish I had one. They were shaped just like an 8-track, but they had you'd set a cassette tape down in it and then put it in the player.
Yeah.
You've got something different.
Yeah, see how it opens up?
I have never, wow. I've never seen one of those before.
Yeah, you put a tape in it, you shove it in there,
and it'll play your tapes.
Well, that's what these other ones would do, and they were smaller. Like you take your 8-track, and like if you laid it like this, there'd be an indentation, like a space to lay your cassette down, and then you put it in the player. Wow, that looks like it would stick out of the player so far that it would wobble. But
no, it actually works pretty good. I just haven't cleaned the heads on this that good, but it works good. I mean, you'll be surprised. You could put this in a car. If the car has an 8-track player, which some of the older cars do, and it'll play a tape fine. But these are pretty rare.
I was going to say I've never seen ones like that before, because when someone says 8-track adapter to me, I automatically think of the ones that are just shaped like the 8-tracks. That's amazing, and that just kind of goes to show. In a more modern equivalent of that would be like, remember when DVDs first started coming out?
Yeah.
And people would have all these VHS tapes, but they'd have and then they'd come up with the DVD VHS players. Like, anytime there's a big format shift like that, it's really, really tough on people that have these big collections of things. Like, I don't know if there'll ever be a time when there's that nostalgia for VHS tapes, but you could go to any flea market, like any place that sells used stuff, and there's always stacks and stacks and stacks of VHS tapes, and it makes me kind of sad when I see them, because I used to have a few, not that many, but it's really the same thing. It's like all of a sudden it's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? None of the albums I like are coming out on the format that I have. So that those 8-track adapters were one way of trying to maintain it a little bit longer. Yeah,
that's true. And then I forgot to tell you about, do you remember did you ever see I don't have one with me, but the 8-track changers, the ones with 4 8-tracks. Have you seen those?
I've never seen one in person, but they kind of went in a circle.
No, they have a circle one, but they have one that you just plop in. I wish I had to show you one, but you just stick it in. Like, there's 4 of them, and it has a cover on it, and you can play 4 8-tracks. It's really,
and you don't have to change them.
Yeah, it's really unique. It's a nice little piece. But those are hard
early
to find.
Version of a CD changer.
Yeah. Those are really hard to find. I got a buddy who has one, but his already broke down because maintenance. That's another thing. You got to maintain it. But those are great, man.
But
those
I have seen those carousel ones. I don't know how many those hold, but same idea. They're just continuous. If you just have a bunch of people over, you load it up and you let it play. What it reminds me of is when I was a kid, like, I remember my parents said, anytime my grandparents have a record player, you'd put a record on, but then you'd put like 4 or 5 ones on top. Yeah. And it would only play a side at a time. But as the record would end, it would drop down and the needle would go on that one too, when it worked right.
Right.
I do remember, like, they'd all drop down at once.
Right. I seen one of those. You remember those old console players, the ones I was talking about, where they played the 8-tracks of the record player? Well, I
Yeah.
knew a guy who had a console record player where his record player would play 60 records automated on one of those players.
Wow.
That was insane. I've never seen
That's
anything like that.
that-
I don't know
That's a
how it
lot of
works.
weight.
Yeah,
put.
well, it was on a huge
Yeah.
console. It's a huge wooden console. It was
Yeah.
built in back in the days, and it would play 60 records. I mean, this thing was crazy. I've never seen anything like that.
I can't
Wild
imagine
stuff.
because how much that would weigh. Because the ones that I remember, there would be like the spindle that would come up. You put the record down on
Yeah,
it, but it would have like
yeah,
a piece of metal that would go like this, and it would hold the
right,
record in place. That's a lot of
right, right.
pressure to put on. It's got to be something more sturdy than that.
It was.
That
I think it would load. I don't know how it would load because I couldn't see it. It was the way it was situated. I think it somehow sideways. I don't know. But it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know how those things would work. This is the 1950s. You got to understand.
Yeah.
Or late 60s. Sorry. I don't know. It was just crazy. The crazy things that they used to invent.
It's funny because when you get into researching, like if you start searching for 8-tracks, you start reading about it online, inevitably
Right.
you're going to read about these other formats and these other machines. But I got to say, that's that adapter you showed me, that blows my mind because I've never ever seen one of them, never heard of them before. You could have something really, really rare on your hands there.
Yeah,
so,
I actually have two of them. I just got to find the other one. And you just take care of them and they work fine. You'll play any tapes and stuff. And I have a very, very expensive tape deck, and I have some tapes. And I noticed that now tapes are coming back. Now more people are collecting tapes.
Yeah. It's funny because at first what I did was, like, when I started buying CDs, my friends that didn't have the tapes, they'd end up with the tapes. Right. But I've gotten to the point where I really want to, like, buy them back as much as I can. And just like with the 8-tracks, I try to get all the ones that were ever made for, especially my favorite bands. But just to try to get a complete collection. And it's not really that easy because especially when you get into the later years.
Yeah, I noticed some tapes are getting really hard to find, and you would think they would be a lot easier, but no, it's not.
Or expensive.
Yeah.
You know, like if you try to find the first couple Yes albums on cassette, they're $25. If you can find them, it's like, why? Yeah, and it must be just there weren't as many made, or people that have them know that people are looking for them. I'm not sure, but So Ernesto, this has been a really educational. This has been one of the most educational episodes I've done. I've loved seeing the old gear, and especially the adapters and stuff like that. We're definitely going to have to do this again. You know, next time, both of us, we get a bunch more 8-tracks to talk about, and if you get some cool new players. But like, this has been a lot of fun. Remember, folks, Zartan69 on Instagram, great content. He posts all the time. It's always very, very cool stuff. So thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to me. And I hope everybody's enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.